Hi, how are you?
Good, how are
I'm
you?
doing great.
I'm so happy that we're doing this.
Yes, I was so excited that you reached out.
I'm gonna scoot this back. You never know. There we go. Okay.
Get
How are
adjusted
ya?
here. Good.
You're in North Carolina,
I
right?
am. You are too?
I'm in Raleigh.
Very nice. I lived there for like 10 years.
Yeah,
So when you said in your message, like, oh, I live near this place, I was like, I used to have an apartment right over there.
that's amazing. We'll have to talk about it.
Yeah.
Not publicly.
Yeah.
Well, I'm so glad that you're here. And it's today, right? Today is publication day.
Today is the
I
day.
feel a lot of pressure with that, but that's okay. I
No
didn't
pressure at
realize,
all.
I did not realize it when we scheduled it. And then I was like looking back at my notes and I was like, oh, that's kind of a big deal.
It worked out perfectly.
Well, we are talking about Seven of Hearts, which I don't have a physical copy, so we're going to pretend I'm holding it. It's so pretty.
I don't even have mine in here with me. I'm not with it
No,
today.
no, that's okay. It's a big day. But let's go ahead and jump right in. I want to start with hearing more about you and your author journey to this point before we talk about the book.
Yeah, so I started writing back in 2020. Pandemic was happening like a lot of people. I started by writing fan fiction, and it just kind of turned into, oh, I think, I like these original characters. They deserve their own book. And so that sort of morphed into, well, maybe I should try to write my own book. And now this is book 18 later, so it has been a wild, wild ride.
That is amazing. Like 18 books in not even 5 years.
Yeah.
I don't even know how you can do that.
A lot of At the beginning, it was a lot of late nights. I was a very new mom. I had a very young child, and so I was writing during nap time. And after she went to bed at night, I was still working another job part time, and so it was just getting little bits and pieces. And I've been lucky enough to be full time for 2-ish years now, so that makes it a little bit easier.
Yeah, I would think so, but still not easy.
Yeah, but it's been
I'm
great.
so excited to hear that. Well, we are talking about Seven of Hearts, which again has come out today, everybody, so it is available. But can you go ahead and give us just a little summary of it?
So, Seven of Hearts is a standalone surprise pregnancy, accidental pregnancy, best friend's brother romance, can hit all the tropes. Um, it is small town, and it is between Logan and Leah, who have a one night stand after his sister's wedding. And then two pink lines show up, and everything changes for them.
Yes, so Logan appears in a previous series that you wrote, the Beaufort Poker Club, which
Mhm.
I had not read before I read this. And I can say, like, that's totally fine. You can still really enjoy this story. So I'm curious to know, like, if you always knew, hey, he's going to get his own book, or did that just kind of happen? And what was it like visiting old characters?
I had a pretty good idea when I was writing that series that he was going to eventually get a book. He's introduced in that series as the sibling of the main character in book 4. And then I think by book 6 I had decided that this book was going to happen. Of course, that was 2 years ago. Those books came out in 2022. And so I've been sitting on this one for quite some time. Um, but yeah, I knew he was a little bit older than all of his other siblings. At the time, he was 17 in that original book, so he was close to adulthood, and it was a little bit easier to kind of see his personality and things coming out. And he had a really great character arc then. I was like, oh, we need to keep this going. So, decided to jump in and write his story. I started it 2 years ago and then tabled it and wrote a bunch of other stuff, and finally got back around to it. And I think it was a good time to do that.
Yeah, it's almost like it gives you like mentally the same kind of growth that he did. Like he's
For
jumped forward a
sure.
decade. So
Yeah, we aged him up a lot.
yeah, it could feel a little funny going from like reading a 17-year-old and then next month he's like almost 30.
Yeah. And I always kind of struggled with writing like a second generation. So I always say like this is not second gen because he's a sibling, he's not a child. Um, I struggle with that because in my mind, they are always going to be the ages that they were in their original books. So he was a little bit easier to age up than everybody else. Um, it was, a little bit strange writing his youngest sister, who was 17 in Seven of Hearts, but she's 6 when I first wrote her. So big change there.
Well, I immediately after I finished it, like I literally downloaded the fourth book on KU to read like his sister's story because there was
Mhm.
enough like there that it didn't feel like it would be unenjoyable, and it felt very much like, okay, now I need to know like how this all happened. So it was really fun kind of getting to see all the different life points
Yeah,
in different spaces.
I love that.
Uh, so Leah and Logan, they both have very distinct points of view, and I would love to know more about how you kind of approach writing different POVs.
I love writing opposites attract. So the more different I can make characters, the more fun I have with it. And I think Logan and Leah just approach life very, very differently. She is bubbly and outgoing and is just very go with the flow. And of course, he's a little bit of a perfectionist, a control freak, and for good reason. But I think that made for a really interesting pairing, especially when they both get thrown into something so unexpected.
Well, and yeah, I don't actually, I'm not going to say anything because I don't want to spoil anything. So bringing that back in, but unexpected pregnancy, we've already spoken about that it's a part of this story. It's a big part.
Hmm.
It's such like a love or hate trope, and admittedly, I did not like it for the longest time, and it's really within the last couple of years that I've started to feel like, okay, I'm not immediately going to say no if that's in there, and actually, I enjoy it a lot. But I think that a lot of people just still hate it. So I'd love to know more about like how you decided to to choose such a divisive trope.
Yeah, I knew going into it, like, I told my Facebook reader group, I was like, this is a surprise pregnancy romance. It is like mint chocolate chip ice cream. I hate mint chocolate chip ice cream, and it can be the best mint chocolate chip ice cream in the world, and I'm still not going to like it. So it's okay if if you pass on it because it's not the flavor of book that you like. Um, but I knew this was the first true surprise pregnancy trope I've written. I've written a lot of like not his baby, that kind of thing, which is one of my favorites. But this was the first like true, oh no, oops, there's a baby coming. Um, and so that was really fun for me to write. It's one of my favorite tropes because I just love when the hero dotes on her and takes care of her. And Logan is very much a caregiver. I think that's how he shows love. Um, and so I felt like it really fit these characters and it really drove character growth for them.
I love it too because I feel like Logan, when you first meet him in this story, you kind of are like, you get a very specific picture of the kind of person he is, but he like has a tendency to surprise you in this story with like his approach to things. And I really loved that a lot.
He does. I think that you think, okay, he's going to be so perfectionist, he's going to be so strict, he's going to be really resistant to a lot of things, but he does have such a huge capability for growth. And I think he understands that even though it's uncomfortable for him, he's really going to make the effort there.
Well, kind of pivoting a little bit, they both have difficult family dynamics and backgrounds. And you learn a lot about Logan's story in the previous series, but you do learn a lot more of his own perspective here. And it's not easy, and hers is completely different, but it's also very difficult. So, where did you decide, like, along the way, I'm going to make both of these people have, like, really challenging backgrounds? And obviously, like, you couldn't rewrite his history,
Yeah.
it was already on paper. But why make both of them have, difficult lives?
I think I wanted to show, the complexity of relationships, especially I think Leah's mom says it on the page where she's like, it's really hard to be the parent of an adult because you want the best for your kids, but you also have to let them be adults and make their own choices. And so I wanted to show really the dichotomy of when a relationship can be saved and when it can't. Um, and when, somebody is maybe acting out of fear or out of discomfort because you're not making the choices that they would make versus somebody who is self-serving and there's really no redemptive quality there. And I think it's something that they bonded over, where, like you said, even though they are terrible for really different reasons, um, it's something that they kind of understand each other on.
Yeah, the relatability, while not the thing you want to relate on, it can bring you together for sure.
Yeah,
One thing I really loved about Leah was just how like selfless she is and how she just approaches things with so much optimism and like happiness. But I found obviously this can be a detriment when you allow it to kind of hold you back from saying what you need to say or like getting the help that you need in other areas. So I want to talk about what you feel like was a pivotal moment of like her growth arc. Where did she really get the motive and need to change?
I think she really had to learn to rely on people. Um, she's very self-reliant, independent, and I think it's always because she's had this network of people around her who support her. She has her best friend Kylie, and they're like sisters. She has, two great families that she works for. For better or for worse, she did have a very strong and opinionated mother who had no problem stepping in and, parenting her adult child. Um, and then slowly but surely, I kind of stripped all those things away. So she's pregnant with the best friend's brother's baby. So now she can't really confide in the best friend. And mom is playing matchmaker with an ex. And so we've got to take mom out of the equation. And so, really, like taking all those things away forced her to rely on Logan. And then, throwing in a couple unexpected scenarios into this very unexpected pregnancy of gestational diabetes and morning sickness and, just a lot of things that so many women go through during their pregnancies, um, really gave him a chance to step up for her and to show like, hey, I'm going to be here for you. You don't have to ask. I'm just going to be here and I want to be here. So let me do it. I think a lot of times very independent people, and I'm talking to myself here, have trouble asking for help, because you're like, I got it, I'm good. I don't want to be a bother. And I think she really had to learn it's okay to be a bother. People want to help you. And so that was just really great to see her grow and change and, kind of learn through that.
I also felt like as maybe kind of fun as it is to have this side character, the relationship she had with her neighbor, I felt like was actually really important for that lesson too. To be like, okay, well, if some stranger can help me, so can these
Absolutely.
people that love me.
Yeah. I think sometimes we have a tendency, it's actually very relevant to the book I'm writing now, which is not at all connected to this, but we have a tendency to be able to rely on strangers more than we can rely on the people that we love because we don't want to feel like an imposition. Um, and so, really seeing both of those kind of mirror each other and then see her, slowly grow a little bit more comfortable with it, I think was a great character arc for her.
On the other hand, we have Logan who has kind of run away from home. He's left home, and he kind of teaches us the lesson of you sometimes just have to leave home in order to find it for yourself. Why was this important for him?
I think for Logan, like you said, he was running away from all of these opinions and thoughts about himself. And he thought if I just get away from it geographically, I can move on from it. And then, he does that and he realizes he's just as miserable. He is, just still hurt by it and, hasn't really addressed any of that. And I think that when he comes back, he really has to confront all of those things and realizing that they're not going to go away because they're in his head, they're in his heart. It's not just some, exterior force. And so when he's confronted by Leah's parents, when he's confronted by his own parents, he really has to choose, am I going to let somebody else's opinions of me shape who I think that I am, who my partner thinks that I am, who my child will think that I am. And so it really forced him to go back and actually deal with it rather than just kind of pushing it off and putting it in a box and putting it away.
Yeah, and I feel like I need to clarify in case that would like throw anybody off. He is not living at home when the book starts. So it's not like he runs away because
Yes.
of these circumstances. Um, so we've kind of covered a lot of like the heavier topics that have happened without going into too much detail. How do you write heavy topics with sensitivity and care?
A lot of edits. Um, like honestly, a lot of screenshots to different people being like, is this too much? Did I go too far here? But I also think that a lot of those sensitive topics need to be talked about because, with this book in particular, with gestational diabetes, it's so common. It's nothing that you did wrong. You didn't do anything wrong. You didn't have a terrible diet. It just happens. Um, and so like taking away that guilt and that shame over something that's out of your control or something that you're uncomfortable with, or maybe just something that hasn't been talked about a whole lot, I think is really important to make people feel good about themselves and to feel comfortable in their own skin. And I've always said, if I can make people feel seen, heard, known, and loved, I've done my job.
I love that. Yeah, I think that was a really interesting reading about like the different things that occur during pregnancy because, it can be so like you can just go into yourself and really think, what did I do? But
Yeah,
I found that to be really just a beautiful approach to it, I guess.
thank you.
So you mentioned edits and lots of edits. So how much did this book change from like initial conception to final edits?
So much. Like I said, I started writing this book 2 years ago. I think I had like 5 chapters written and then I didn't touch it for quite some time. And in between then, I wrote a whole bunch of other books. This book was originally going to be romantic suspense. There was going to be much more danger at the end. It was going to focus way more on his parents and some stuff going on there. And when I picked this back up back in October of last year or September of last year, I had just written a cowboy romance called Fireline, which is also romantic suspense. And I realized when I picked it back up, I was like, these plots are exactly the same. So I ended up, kind of sitting down and looking at the characters and changing the plot almost entirely. But still keeping that catalyst of one night stand at the wedding, surprise pregnancy. And I think it turned out so much better because it really focused on Logan and Leah and their personal courses that are, super exciting and fun and kind of keep you on the edge of your seat. But this really honored their growth and their journey as individuals and as a couple.
Yeah, and who knows like what that other book would have become if you'd already written.
Exactly.
Which, by the way, I did just get. I bought. It's three books in that series, right?
Hmm.
Bought all three of them, and they just delivered.
Ooh,
So I'm so.
enjoy.
If readers were to take just one thing away from this story, what would you want it to be?
Don't be afraid to go home. I think, oh, I'm talking to myself like hardcore because I moved away from home when I was 17. And so I've always been super independent, and it can be really, really humbling to go back home and ask for help and to rely on people because you want to be like, oh, I'm an adult, I'm a grown up, I've got it all together and all figured out. And the reality is, we're all living life for the first time. And so it's okay to go home. It's okay to rely on your loved ones and seek advice and seek wisdom. And that was, I think, my favorite thing to write of the whole book was when Logan and Will would have their talks together. And Will, just being like the sage wisdom giver, um, really like lifted him up, but also called him out when he needed to be called out. And we're like, you're making a mistake. Go back to her and try again. And so it was just such a treat to write those moments. But I think, as a whole, that idea of it's okay to go home, it's okay to screw up. It's what happens after you screw up that matters.
Well, I think the biggest misconception of adulthood is that we suddenly know what we're doing.
No one knows what
I,
they're doing.
my husband and I are always talking about like, are is the whole world run by people that are just making it up as they go?
It
Because
is.
oh, it's hilarious. Well, a fun question I always ask, and it's okay if you don't have an answer, is who would you fan cast as your main characters?
I had to think about this one for a minute when you sent it because people ask this and I'm like, I don't know who celebrities are these days. I know like the Hemsworth brothers and Margot Robbie and that's it. Um,
Those
but
are good
I
ones to
think,
know.
I mean, honestly, I would put them in anything. But I think for Logan and Leah, I would cast Miles Teller as Logan. I think he has that emotional range. He has that like wounded hero thing going on. And I would cast Daisy Edgar Jones as Leah. She was the leading lady in Twisters and Where the Crawdads Sing, and I just think she would be fantastic.
I love both of them, so I fully support those
I
choices.
think it would be a great pairing. We need to see them in a movie together.
Well, I wanted to take a few minutes to just talk through like the writing technique and everything like that. Sometimes we get aspiring authors and writers that want just more information about like what your writing process is like.
My writing process is very straightforward. I feel like it's the most, when I hear other people talk about their writing process, I'm like, oh, I'm just very boring. I'm a plotter. I do like major book outlines where it's, kind of two paragraphs and just skims everything that's going to happen. And then I do a chapter by chapter outline before I start writing so that I can just, kind of go down the list. I have to write chronologically. I'm very jealous of the people who can skip around and just write different chapters at different times. That would make life so much easier when I'm not feeling something on that particular day. But yeah, I start at the prologue or chapter one and go all the way through the bonus content in one sitting, or, over the course of many days. But, um, and then I do a couple passes of like developmental edits, self edits, that sort of thing. Then it goes off for copy and line edits, get it back, usually two or three more passes myself, and then it goes off to proofreading. So every book is a little bit different. With this one in particular, I used beta readers, which I use sometimes because it was sort of derived from the Beaufort Poker Club series. I wanted to make sure that this could be read as a standalone. And so I pulled people who had never read the Poker Club and gave it to them. I was like, does this make sense? Am I missing something here? Does all the character explanations make sense? And so getting their feedback was really, really helpful on this one in particular. Um, yeah, I think that that's pretty much how almost every book goes.
How
But
long would you say on average is like your process start to finish when you really start to dive into writing a book?
it takes me about 40 days to write a first draft. I usually do a chapter a day, which for me is about 2,500 to 3,000 words, um, which is 4 or 5 hours of writing if I'm really like buckled down. There are days where it's like it's all day and we barely get anything done. But yeah, 40 days pretty much straight through, and then edits usually about 3 weeks, and then another month for kind of tweaking and proofreading and getting it publishing ready.
I still just feel like that is so fast.
It is really fast. I'm venturing into the traditional publishing world right now, which I can finally talk about, which is super exciting. And so, learning their timelines has been really wild to me because I'm like, I can write so many books in this time. What do you mean I have 6 months to write a book? This is wild. Um, and so it's just been a really fun learning curve with that.
Well, what was that journey like? Because I actually literally just found out that that happened for you. Congrats, by the way.
Thank you.
But how did that end up happening?
Um, so I was writing the Griffith Brothers series last year. It really took off, and I'm super grateful. And I think it just goes to show the power of readers, and there was a lot of interest. And so my fabulous, fabulous agent found a great home for it with Berkeley Publishing. And so it is going to be re-released later this year and the beginning of the following year in print through Berkeley. And then overseas in the UK with Hodder, they will be re-releasing digital and print over there. Um, so super, super exciting stuff there. And then I've got a new series coming out with Berkeley in the coming years.
Whoa, that's so exciting. Well, I did want to ask you like what else is next for you. So that's a
It
lot, but if there is
is.
if there is anything else, I'd love to hear it.
Yeah, this year is a little bit nuts. So this book came out today. I have another book coming out on April 28th, which is called 700 Senses of Summer. Um, it is a firefighter romance. They are renovating a house on the North Carolina coast, and it is, I'm heavily playing into the romance novel cliches. And so this is, she inherits her dead relative's house and has to go fix it up, as you know they always do, and then meets the hunky firefighter next door, and they just have a blast. There's a little bit of mystery, treasure hunting. And then I've got another book coming out June 23rd, which will be the last book in that series, and it's called 500 First Editions. And I'm wrapping up that one right now. Um, and then I'll go on a little bit of a break as we get ready for the Dust Storm re-release in October.
Wow, you're gonna be busy.
It is
So
back to back.
is that just a duology, or were there books before that one too?
There's one book before, it's called 100 Lifetimes of Us, and that is a bodyguard romance, and that one's already out. So that
Nice.
one started as a standalone, and then I decided to add two more to it.
I think I signed up for the arc for the 700.
Hmm.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
think I did.
that one's out right now.
That's exciting. That is
Yeah,
that's a lot going on for you.
it is. It is.
But all very exciting things.
So I'm very excited. It's going to be a really wonderful ride. And on the indie side, like I have such a great team of, PAs and admins and editors. And then on the trad side, I have such a wonderful team over there. And so it's just been really fun to kind of expand and get to work with so many really great people. And we have a ton of audiobooks coming out this year, which is well overdue.
That's amazing too. I am always so impressed by like that the audio space because man, what a ride to do
It's been a
those.
learning curve with audio. I
Yeah.
was so scared to touch that for so long, and I've paired up with a great producer with Lyric Audiobooks, and she has held my hand through the process and explained things to me like I'm five because I need it dumbed down for me. But everyone has just been so wonderful, and I'm super excited for those audiobooks to come out.
Well, Maggie, that's all so great. And I'm so thankful that you came and joined me on
Yeah,
Pub Day of all
yes,
days. I would love to have you back in the future if
absolutely.
it works out and you want to. But Seven of Hearts is available today. Everyone should go pick it up. Don't let the tropes scare you. It's amazing. But thank you so much, Maggie. I hope you have
Thank
a
you so
great
much for having me.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.